Over the past few years, Sony released so many new lenses, so many new iterations of existing lenses, or like new versions of existing lenses, or just like totally random new lenses. So I'm talking like, all these G Master compact lenses replacing old Zeiss lenses. I'm talking about new zooms replacing the old zooms. So we have 70-200 version 2 Mark II replacing Mark 1, but they both actually exist. And then 24-70, 16-35, all these new lenses come up with like a new build. And then we have these all new out of the blue kind of lenses, like a new focal ranges. So we had 20-70 f4, and now this year we have this 24-50 f2.8 and 16-25 f2.8 G lens, which I'm going to briefly talk about. Like, this is going to be my example for this video, how the Sony approaches new lenses and what are my thoughts and perspective about this. Because as for today, Sony has over 70 native lenses in its offer. It's huge, and I'll be honest, all the newly released ones are exceptional. And since I recently also tested a bunch of Sigma lenses, and I'm getting a lot of these 3D Artisan lenses, Viltrox lenses, like I get to test a lot of lenses. So in this video, I'm going to present you my thoughts about like the differences about the lenses and what do I think, how do the new G Master or G lenses stack up against like the cheaper competition. So like a Sigmas, Samyangs and Tamrons of the world that became like this kind of mid-level, lenses are not cheap anymore, but are not as expensive as Sony lenses and are almost as good. And then we have like all these very cheap lenses that used to be manual focus. So like all the TT Artisan lenses used to be manual focus, but now they come up with the autofocus lenses. So yeah, are the Sony lenses worth the money? Let me give you my perspective. First of all, like it feels really boring every time Sony comes up with a new lens, and they do invite me for like this press pre-release. So they do like this presentation about the new lens before it comes up. It's obviously, I have to sign a document, non-disclosure document, so I do not spill any news before the lens comes up, but I get to see the slides and Sony explaining what is so good about the new lens. And usually I feel like this presentation could be like a copy paste of like every single presentation they have with every single lens they release. The theme is very common. This lens is smaller, it's faster, it's sharper, has better operations, buttons, aperturing and all that stuff. And all of that stuff, and then it has superior sharpness and resolution and all that stuff. So this is kind of a common theme across every single slide I've seen in the last few years about every new lens that comes up with Sony. What is impressive, that they do actually deliver on that promise. Every single time I actually get the lens from Sony, it is exceptional. It is everything they say in the presentation, with like a tiny flaws that I'm gonna mention briefly in a moment. But yeah, they do deliver on that promise. All the lenses are really compact and lightweight, which seems to be like a major factor going forward with Sony. They try to shrink the lenses. Look at all these new G Master or G series lenses, or even that new 16-25. Just take a look at this lens. Yes, it is shorter range because it's 16-25 instead of 35, but look how small it is. It feels like this is like the major factor. This is like the major decision-making point of this lens. If you want a really small and fast lens, this is what you're getting. But also what I've noticed, this comes with like this little flaw that I wanted to mention, is that like technically all these new lenses have huge barrel distortion, which is something that you never see in camera. Like in camera, the image is always corrected. You'll never see any of the distortion. It's going to look perfect. This is exactly the case with 16-25. I've shot it at 16, I've shot it at 25. It looked amazing in camera. It looked amazing when shooting video. When I did import this to Lightroom, which does not yet have any lens profile for this lens, I did see a barrel distortion. Is it a problem? It's not, because it's a one-click fix. And actually, if you are using lens profiles, which I believe everyone is using, these are by default on in terms of like in camera and in Lightroom. If like after the lens is released. So this is not a huge problem. It looks like Sony wants to have a smaller lens, like even at the cost of that raw distortion, which in my opinion is a good decision. And when looking at the build, the construction of all these new lenses, we see the common designs across the board. So what is interesting that it doesn't matter if it's a G lens or a G Master lens. So G Master are like the top series from Sony. G lenses are kind of this like lower mid-tier series from Sony. The lenses, they look identical. Look at 24 G Master 1.4 versus 20 f1.8 G lens. They look almost exactly the same. We have aperture ring, manual focus ring, MF to AF switch, iris lock, aperture ring declic, all these features. Every single new lens that comes up with Sony has all these new features. Material seems to be the same. So there's basically no difference between G Master and a G lens in terms of the build and the quality of the lens. And how about performance? Like looking at every single lens that I've tested in the last months, like they're all pretty much flawless, which is kind of boring. So AF performance, sharpness, the quality of the image is superb. 16 to 25 f2.8G is no exception here. In various tests, it came better than 16 to 35 f2.8 G Master version 1 and just slightly behind the G Master version 2. And the same comes down to the autofocus speed. The linear motors from Sony are amazing. They're just so fast, and they do keep up with shooting up to 120 frames per second on the new A9 Mark III, which is insane. This is insane that you can have your lens to follow the focus at the 120 frames per second rate. So what's the difference between G Master and G lenses then? I feel like this is like historically it was, f2.8 versus f4. Or f1.4 versus f1.8. So it was like the, faster lenses were G Masters and the slightly slower lenses were G series. But the releases of 24 to 50 and 16 to 25 actually do break this rule. Why these new G lenses are not worth GM naming? I think it's like purely because of their range. Maybe because they're smaller. Maybe smaller lenses are going to be G lenses and the bigger lenses are going to be G Master lenses. I don't know. That kind of doesn't make much sense. I feel like both G and the G Master lenses from Sony are exceptional. They all can perform at the highest 120 frames per second with the new Sony cameras. They all can bring you all the advantages of Sony buddies, like in-camera lens corrections, in-camera lens breathing compensation. All of that you get when buying Sony G or G Master lenses. So what about the other options? I do believe the market is have drastically changed after the switch to mirrorless. Like before the mirrorless, I feel like the difference between a top native lens like G Master lens, let's say, and a third party was bigger. But now with the mirrorless, like all these mid-tier lenses are becoming as good as the top lenses, and then all these like super cheap lenses are becoming as good as like the mid-tier lenses. So like we have this shift, like, and everything obviously got so much more expensive. When I'm thinking mid-tier kind of lenses, I'm talking about Sigma lenses, Tamron lenses, and Samyang lenses. Like these three companies, in my opinion, are the ones that are kind of trying to get like as good as possible lenses with like a mid-tier price. They're almost as good as like the native Sony G Master lenses. But every single time I try any of these brands, there's something not working. When I tried Sigma 51.4, it was not sharp. When I tried the new Sigma 51.2, it was not tracking correctly. So although these lenses are almost as perfect as the G Master lenses, there's always something. And for me, so someone who actually shoots G Master lenses on a regular daily basis, whenever I try that mid-tier lens, I can feel that this is not G Master when shooting. Obviously, when I hit the image, when the autofocus is correct, when everything is working, like you look at the images, no difference. You will not be able to tell a difference. There is only a difference, in my opinion, in terms of the performance, in terms of the, how many sharp photos are you getting from a series. And also all these third-party lenses, like all Sigmas, Tamron, Samyangs, they will never be able to use all the features from a camera. So they will never be able to shoot 120 frames per second. They won't even be able to shoot 30 frames per second on A1 camera, and they will not be able to use focus breathing compensation. So all these features that Sony is trying to build in bodies, you will not be able to use with a third-party lenses. Is it a big problem? For some of you, not at all. And if this is not a problem for you, like, by all means, mid-tier lenses, you can save so much money by getting these. If you feel like you want the best of the best performance, you need to go for G Master or G lenses, because then you will feel the difference. If you need to rely on your lens, if you need to have every single shot you want like as good as possible, you're going for the top tier lenses. If not, you can just simply save so much money getting the mid-tier lenses, and the results on Instagram, on your website, in your portfolio for your clients, they will never see the difference. You will be the only person who will know that you might have missed a shot because of some tracking issue, let's say with your camera. Having said that, I'm happy to see awesome lenses coming from a third party. And then on the bottom of that shelf, we have pretty amazing options from all these, again, Chinese companies. So like TD Artisan, Artisans, even Astrohori. So I got so many weird lenses recently, and I'll be honest, I get really excited every time TD Artisan reaches out to me and be like, hey, do you want to try this new lens? And like, sure, I want to try this lens, because this is always something else. This is always something like less boring, less perfect, and I freaking love it. And I do believe like these companies are building momentum, and they're gonna be coming after the top tier lenses really soon. Like, we've seen them being like as good as the Leica lenses for Leica mounts, which is crazy because they don't have to have the perfect autofocus. They don't have to care about many things that you have to care about if you're going for like these top tier Sony, linear motor lenses. So I believe like all these companies will have a lot of market share in the future. I believe like these companies are going to flood the market very soon. And if you're looking for less boring lenses, if you're looking to add some lenses to your arsenal, to get beautiful bokeh, to get like interesting flares, to get something else than a usual, regular, sharp, boring photo, like I feel like these lenses are the way to go. I wonder what you guys are thinking. What type of lenses are you guys equipping yourself with? What do you shoot and what lenses you shoot with? Let me know down in the comments. And yeah, as always, thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys very, very soon. Bye. Ciao.